I am Crystal, 32 years old, and the secret CEO of a tech empire worth billions. My family has no idea. For years, they have belittled my career choices, dismissed my ambitions, and treated me like the family disappointment. Tonight at Christmas dinner, my sister Veronica smirked as my mother announced I would be sleeping in the unheated garage while her boss got the guest room. My hands trembled with silent rage beneath the table. 5 years I have hidden my success, endured their mockery. They have no clue that tomorrow everything changes. Before I tell you how I went from sleeping in a frozen garage to watching my family's jaws drop, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground. I grew up in suburban Boston in a family that valued traditional markers of success. My parents, Julia and Richard Montgomery, had very specific ideas about what achievement looked like. Prestigious universities, conventional career paths, and the external validation that came with them. My older sister Veronica, now 38, was the golden child who checked every box on their list of expectations. She attended an Ivy League school, got her MBA, and landed a marketing director position at Apex Industries, a well-established tech firm. Every family gathering became a showcase for her accomplishments. My younger brother Ethan, 28, quickly learned to follow Veronica's blueprint. He studied finance, joined a respected accounting firm, and recently made junior partner. My parents beamed with pride whenever they spoke about him, their voices warm with approval. Then there was me stuck in the middle, the square peg. They could never hammer into their round hole of expectations. From the time I was 10, I was fascinated by computers and coding. While other kids played video games, I wanted to understand how they worked. I would spend hours taking apart old electronics and teaching myself programming languages. My parents viewed this as me playing around a phase I would outgrow once I discovered real interests. "Crystal, when are you going to join a proper club?" my mother would ask. "Colleges look for well-rounded students, not kids who sit in their room all day." High school only widened the gap between my interests and my family's expectations. While Veronica was class president and prom queen, I started a coding club that met in the computer lab during lunch. My unconventional thinking that teachers praised as innovative was labeled at home as a lack of focus. "You jump from one project to another," my father complained after I abandoned a half-finished robot to work on a website I was building. "You need to see things through like your sister." What they failed to understand was that I wasn't abandoning ideas. I was evolving them, each project teaching me something I carried into the next. College was supposed to be my turning point. I enrolled in business school to appease my parents, but simultaneously worked on my startup idea. By sophomore year, I knew I had something promising, a revolutionary cloud security solution that larger companies were already expressing interest in. When I decided to drop out to pursue it full-time, my family reacted as if I had announced plans to join a cult. "You are throwing your life away," my father said, his disappointment palpable across the dinner table. "We did not raise you to be a quitter. Even if this little project of yours works out, which it won't, what kind of life will that be?" my mother added. "No stability, no benefits, no real career." Veronica, home for the weekend, shook her head with that superior smile I had grown to hate. "Not everyone is cut out for success, Mom. Some people need to learn the hard way." The comparisons became relentless after that. Every family gathering turned into a showcase of Veronica's achievements, juxtaposed against my perceived failures. She would arrive in her luxury car dressed in designer clothes, talking about her corner office and team of subordinates. My parents introduced her with pride at neighborhood functions while awkwardly changing the subject when asked about me. "Veronica just closed a 7-figure marketing deal," my father would tell anyone who would listen. "Crystal is." Still figuring things out, my mother would say when forced to acknowledge my existence. The turning point came 3 years ago at Thanksgiving dinner. I had just secured $2 million in seed funding, but when I tried to share the news, Veronica interrupted with an announcement about her promotion to senior director. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, completely forgetting I had been mid-sentence. As everyone raised their glasses to toast Veronica, I made a decision. I would stop seeking their approval. More than that, I would keep my growing success to myself. Let them think what they wanted. Someday, when the time was right, they would learn the truth. That night, I founded Nexatech Solutions. What began as a security software startup quickly expanded into a comprehensive tech ecosystem that attracted major clients. Within 2 years, we had offices in 3 cities. By year 3, we had gone international. I built strategic partnerships, acquired smaller companies, and reinvested profits to fuel exponential growth, all while maintaining a modest public persona. As CEO, I made the unconventional choice to remain anonymous in industry circles, operating through trusted executives for public appearances. It was partly a business strategy, allowing us the advantage of being underestimated by competitors, but mostly it was personal. I wasn't ready for my family to know. The emotional toll of living this double life was significant. I owned a penthouse downtown, but told my family I rented a studio apartment. I drove a 10-year-old Honda to family functions, while my collection of luxury cars stayed in my private garage. I endured questions about when I would get a real job while running board meetings for a company valued at billions. 5 years after dropping out, I orchestrated our biggest move. Yet the acquisition of Apex Industries, the very company where Veronica built her career, the irony wasn't lost on me. Soon, without knowing it, my golden child sister would be working for the family disappointment. The acquisition papers for Apex Industries arrived in my office exactly 1 week before Christmas. I sat at my desk running my fingers over the embossed logo now stamped with a Nexatech company beneath it. 5 years of work had culminated in this moment. The company that had fueled my sister's superiority complex was now mine. "Would you like me to arrange the announcement to the Apex employees?" my assistant Diane asked. I shook my head. "Not until after the holidays. Let them enjoy Christmas without worrying about corporate restructuring." What I didn't say was that I wanted one last family gathering with the old dynamic intact. One final Christmas with them, unaware, before everything changed. The annual invitation from my parents had arrived via text as perfunctory as ever: Christmas Eve dinner at 6. Let us know if you're coming. No warmth, no excitement at the prospect of seeing me. Just logistics. I texted back my acceptance, though every instinct told me to decline. 5 years of conditioning had taught me what to expect. Hours of Veronica's boasting, my parents' thinly veiled disappointment, and Ethan's quiet allegiance to the family hierarchy that placed me firmly at the bottom. Despite owning a fleet of luxury vehicles, I drove my trusty Honda Civic to my parents' suburban home on Christmas Eve. The modest car was part of my cover, but it also served as armor. It reminded me that I had nothing to prove to them, that their validation no longer determined my worth. I pulled into the driveway behind an ostentatious Jaguar I didn't recognize. Inside, I found my answer. Veronica had brought a guest, Harold Winters, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Apex Industries, her boss, and the man she had been trying to impress for years. "Cristal, you remember Harold?" Veronica said, though we had never met. She wore a red designer dress that probably cost more than what she thought I earned in a month. Harold stood beside her in an expertly tailored suit, Rolex gleaming on his wrist. "Actually, we haven't had the pleasure," I said, extending my hand. I had deliberately dressed down in jeans and a simple sweater, playing my part to perfection. Crystal, there you are, my mother called from the kitchen doorway. I could use some help with the vegetables. Veronica and Harold are catching up with your father in the living room. And there it was, the familiar pattern. Veronica entertained in the living room while I was relegated to kitchen duty. I silently chopped carrots and peeled potatoes, listening to the laughter from the other room. So how's the new corner office, Harold? My father asked. Veronica tells us the view of the harbor is spectacular. It certainly is, Richard, though I hear our mysterious new CEO has an even better one, Harold replied. My ears perked up at this. Technically, I did have a better view from the top floor of the Nexatech Tower downtown. Have you met this new CEO yet? My father inquired. No one has, Veronica interjected. He's like a ghost. Makes all these decisions that upend everything but never shows his face. Her face, I whispered to myself, smiling slightly at the carrot I was chopping. Crystal, how's that little website thing you were working on? My father called out, suddenly remembering my existence. Any luck with it? I bit my tongue. My little website thing had just acquired Veronica's company for $3 billion. It's coming along, I answered noncommittally. You know there's an entry-level marketing position opening up at Apex next quarter, Veronica said, entering the kitchen to refill her wine glass. Nothing fancy, but it would give you some actual experience. I could put in a word. The condescension in her voice made my jaw clench. If she only knew that I would be reviewing her performance evaluations next month. Thanks, but I'm okay with my current situation, I managed. Suit yourself, she shrugged, returning to the living room. I caught snippets of my parents' conversation as I finished the dinner preparations. At least Ethan is making something of himself, my mother said in a hushed tone. I worry about Crystal, 32 and still chasing internet dreams. Veronica has tried to help her, my father responded. But you can't help someone who won't help themselves. I closed my eyes, letting the familiar pain wash over me. 5 years of success had insulated me from caring too deeply about their opinions, but some wounds never fully heal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my CFO about the Apex transition finalized the retention packages for key executives. Harold Winters on the list, per your instructions. I smiled despite myself. Harold had no idea that his future at the company was already being decided by the woman chopping vegetables in this kitchen. The final straw came just before dinner. I had stepped into the hallway to quickly check an urgent email when I overheard Veronica and my mother talking in the guest bedroom. We've put Harold in here, of course, my mother was saying. Your father and I are in our room, Ethan's in his old room, and you'll have yours. What about Crystal? Veronica asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Well, the couch in the den is too short, and we're using it to stage the gifts anyway, my mother replied. I thought the garage would work. It's just for one night. Perfect, Veronica laughed. The garage suits her. She's used to roughing it with that startup lifestyle. My blood ran cold. The garage. In Boston. In December. With no heating. My hands trembled with silent rage as I slipped back into the kitchen, pretending I hadn't heard. 5 years of building an empire while enduring their mockery, and they were banishing me to a freezing garage for Christmas Eve. The dining room gleamed with holiday perfection. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier. Fine china plates sat on the heirloom tablecloth, and a centerpiece of pine and holly ran down the middle of the table. It was a scene straight from a Christmas catalog, right down to the assigned seating that placed me at the far end, practically in another time zone from the rest of the conversation. My mother had positioned Harold at the head of the table with my father at the other end. Veronica sat to Harold's right, my mother to his left, and Ethan next to Veronica. I was placed at the furthest point, beside an empty chair, physically manifesting my emotional distance from the family. Harold, to his credit, seemed slightly uncomfortable with the arrangement. Several times during the passing of dishes, he made eye contact with me, a curious expression on his face. "So, Crystal," he said, during a lull in conversation, "what exactly do you do in tech? Veronica mentioned you're interested in the field." Before I could answer, Veronica let out a laugh that she poorly disguised as clearing her throat. "Oh, Crystal dabbles in web stuff," she said dismissively. "Nothing on the scale you're used to at Apex." "I work in security solutions," I said, meeting Harold's eyes directly. "Cloud infrastructure mainly." A flash of genuine interest crossed his face. "Really? That's actually one of our growth areas at Apex. We just acquired a smaller security firm last quarter. What platforms do you specialize in?" Harold, Veronica interrupted, placing her hand on his arm. "You don't need to talk shop with Crystal. Tell them about the Tokyo expansion instead." And just like that, the conversation was redirected. I watched as Harold hesitated, then followed Veronica's lead, launching into a story about Apex's international growth. My brief moment of professional acknowledgement vanished. The dinner proceeded in its usual pattern. Veronica dominated the conversation, with stories about her important clients and strategic insights. My parents hung on her every word, offering approving nods and proud smiles. Ethan occasionally chimed in with his own achievements, receiving similar validation. When I spoke, which was rarely, my comments were met with polite but disinterested responses before someone quickly changed the subject. It was a dance we had perfected over years of family gatherings. "The food is delicious," Julia Harold said, finishing his second helping of ham. "You've outdone yourself." "Thank you, Harold," my mother beamed. "It's so nice having everyone home for Christmas. And having you join us is such a treat." Speaking of which, my father added, "We should discuss sleeping arrangements. It's getting late." My stomach tightened. Here it came. "Harold, we've prepared the guest room for you," my mother said. "Freshly laundered sheets and towels in the ensuite bathroom." "Veronica, you'll have your old room, of course," my father continued, "and Ethan's already settled in his." All eyes turned to me, and I could see the discomfort flicker across my parents' faces. "Crystal," my mother began, her voice taking on a falsely bright tone. "We've set up the garage for you. There's a camping cot and plenty of blankets. I know it's not ideal, but it's just for one night." Veronica smirked behind her wine glass, and Ethan suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "The garage isn't heated," I said flatly. "You can take one of the space heaters my father offered, as if this was a generous concession. It won't be that bad." Harold looked genuinely shocked. "The garage? But it's freezing outside." "Crystal doesn't mind," Veronica said quickly. "She's always been the adventurous one. Haven't you, sis?" The condescension in her voice made my blood boil. I knew then that she had orchestrated this, bringing Harold specifically to ensure I would be the one displaced. "I'm sure we could figure something else out," Harold suggested, looking uncomfortable. "It's fine," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "I have work to do tonight anyway." After dinner, I followed my mother to the garage to see my accommodations. What greeted me was worse than I had imagined. The space was cluttered with storage boxes, old exercise equipment, and forgotten Christmas decorations. In the center was a sagging camping cot with a thin mattress. A pile of mismatched blankets sat at one end, and a small space heater that looked like it was from the 90s stood nearby. "It's just for one night," my mother repeated, not quite meeting my eyes. "And you're always on that laptop of yours anyway. You probably won't even notice." I said nothing, as she retreated back into the warmth of the house. When the door closed behind her, I sat on the edge of the cot and pulled out my phone. The temperature reading showed 28 degrees. Inside the garage, it might be slightly warmer, but not by much. I opened my laptop password, protecting the screen, as was my habit, and saw an urgent message from my executive team. The final details of the Apex acquisition needed my approval before the morning announcement. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., a company-wide email would go out to all Apex employees, including Veronica and Harold, revealing Nexatech as their new parent company. It would also reveal me as the CEO. As I reviewed the documents, a plan began forming in my mind. Why wait until tomorrow? Why not take control of this narrative now? My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Prepared to send the executive briefing tonight instead of tomorrow morning, if you approve. All department heads at Apex will be notified simultaneously. I looked at the time, 8:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Harold and Veronica would both receive the notification as senior staff members. Harold's reaction in particular would be impossible to hide. My finger hovered over the reply button. 5 years of hiding, of enduring their dismissal and disrespect. 5 years of biting my tongue and playing small. Was I really going to let them banish me to a freezing garage on Christmas Eve? The garage door opened, and Harold stepped in looking sheepish. "Sorry to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to check if you were okay out here. It's really cold." Before I could respond, his phone chimed with an incoming email. Then again, and again. Harold frowned, pulling his phone from his pocket. That's strange. Multiple urgent messages from the executive team on Christmas Eve. He opened the first email, and I watched as his expression shifted from confusion to shock. "This says Apex has been acquired by Nexatech Solutions," he said, looking up at me. "Effective immediately." "But that's impossible. We would have known." His phone rang, and he answered it automatically. Harold Winters. "Yes, I just saw the emails." "No, I had no idea. The CEO wants to speak with me now." On Christmas Eve. As he listened to the voice on the other end, his eyes widened, and he slowly turned to look at me. Really, look at me for the first time. Recognition dawned on his face as he connected the dots. She's right here," he said into the phone, his voice barely above a whisper. The garage suddenly felt much colder as Harold stared at me, phone still pressed to his ear. I could hear the tinny voice of my chief operating officer, asking if he was sure if he was actually with Crystal Montgomery, CEO of Nexatech Solutions. "I believe I am," Harold said carefully, his eyes never leaving my face. I held out my hand for the phone. "May I?" With robotic movements, he passed me his cell. The moment felt surreal, sitting on a sagging cot in my parents' cluttered garage, about to shatter 5 years of deception. "James the First," said, using my executive voice, the one my family had never heard. "Yes, I'm with Harold now. The timeline has moved up. Proceed with the full announcement to the executive team tonight. We'll address the rest of the staff tomorrow as planned." I could almost hear James's confusion through the phone. "Tonight, ma'am. It's Christmas Eve." "I'm aware of the date," I replied, watching Harold's face grow increasingly pale. "Some circumstances have changed. Proceed immediately." After ending the call, I handed the phone back to Harold, who took it as if it might bite him. "You're the CEO of Nexatech," he stated, not a question, but a confirmation to himself. "You bought Apex." I confirmed, closing my laptop. "But you're—" He gestured vaguely at my surroundings, the garage, the camping cot, the space heater, struggling against the December chill. "Sleeping in a garage on Christmas Eve," I finished for him. "Yes, it appears so." The door to the house opened again, and Veronica appeared, her own phone clutched in her hand. Her face was drained of color. "Harold, did you get the emails? Something's happening with the company. They're saying we've been acquired by—" Her voice trailed off as she saw the expression on Harold's face, then followed his gaze to me. "What's going on?" "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," I suggested, standing up from the cot. "It's rather cold out here." In a daze, Harold and Veronica followed me back into the house. The warm air hit my face as we entered the kitchen where my parents and Ethan were cleaning up after dinner. "Done settling in already?" my mother asked, without looking up from the dishes. "There's been a change of plans," I said calmly. "We need to talk." Something in my voice must have registered because my mother turned around, dishcloth still in hand. My father looked up from drying a serving platter, and Ethan paused, loading the dishwasher. "What's wrong?" my father asked, looking between me and the shell-shocked expressions on Veronica and Harold's faces. Harold's phone rang again, breaking the tension. He glanced at the screen, then at me, clearly unsure what to do. "You should answer that," I told him. "It's probably the CFO with the retention package details." His eyebrows shot up, but he answered the call, putting it on speaker, perhaps without even realizing it. "Harold, it's Greg from finance. Have you seen the announcement Nexatech has acquired us, and the CEO wants immediate meetings with all department heads? They're saying she's been working undercover or something. Do you know anything about this?" The kitchen fell completely silent. 5 pairs of eyes fixed on me. "Greg, I'll call you back," Harold said, faintly ending the call. "Crystal," Veronica began, her voice unusually high. "What is he talking about? What do you know about this?" I looked around at my family, at the kitchen, where I'd spent countless holidays feeling invisible. The moment I had both dreaded and anticipated for 5 years had arrived. "I'm the CEO and founder of Nexatech Solutions," I said simply. "As of last week, I own Apex Industries." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's dishcloth slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. My father's mouth opened and closed without sound. Ethan froze mid-motion, a plate suspended between his hands and the dishwasher. Veronica broke the silence with a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "That's not possible. Nexatech is worth billions. It's one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country." "Yes," I agreed, "it is." "But you dropped out of college," my father stammered. "You've been working on some small startup." "That small startup was Nexatech," I explained. "It hasn't been small for quite some time." "You're lying," Veronica accused, though. Doubt had begun to creep into her voice. "This is some kind of joke." In response, I pulled out my phone and opened a secure app that connected directly to the Nexatech system. I entered my authorization code and turned the screen toward them, showing the dashboard that only the CEO could access. "This is real-time data from our global operations," I explained. "Our current valuation is just over $11 billion. We have 7,000 employees across 4 continents. And as of last week, that includes everyone at Apex Industries." Harold had begun nodding slowly, pieces falling into place. "The security innovations, the management, restructuring the focus on cloud infrastructure, that was all you." "Every bit of it," I confirmed. "But why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, finding her voice at last. "All this time we thought—" "You thought I was a failure," I finished for her. "You made that abundantly clear. At every holiday, every family gathering, every phone call. We were concerned," my father protested weakly. "We wanted security for you." "No," I corrected him, years of pent-up emotion finally breaking through. "You wanted me to be like Veronica, to follow a path you understood. When I chose differently, you decided I was lost. You never once asked what I was building, or showed any real interest in my work." "That's not fair," Veronica interjected. "We tried to help you. I offered you jobs connections. You offered me entry-level positions and spoke to me with condescension. I countered. You brought your boss to Christmas dinner and had me banished to the garage so you could impress him. Harold winced at this, looking deeply uncomfortable. I didn't know you'd be in the garage, he said quietly. I would never have agreed to stay if I'd known. My mother stepped forward, her expression, shifting to something I rarely saw, directed at me respect, and perhaps a touch of fear. Crystal, sweetheart, if we had known about your company, of course we would have supported you. We've always wanted what's best. Please don't, I interrupted, raising a hand. Don't pretend that you would have treated me differently if you'd known I was rich. That only makes it worse. The kitchen fell silent again. My phone continued to buzz with notifications as the news spread through the executive ranks at both companies. Outside snow had begun to fall, dusting the window panes with white. So what happens now? Ethan asked, speaking for the first time. With Apex, I mean. Business continues as usual for most employees, I explained, grateful for the practical question. There will be some restructuring at the executive level, but no mass layoffs. Veronica's face had gone from white to gray. And me, am I fired? The question hung in the air. 5 years ago, I might have savored this moment, the power to determine my sister's fate. Now, it just felt hollow. No, Veronica, you're not fired, I said. Your marketing strategies have been effective, whatever our personal differences. But you will be reporting to a new director starting next month. Relief washed over her face, quickly replaced by a new worry. Will everyone know about us being sisters? That's up to you, I told her. I've kept my identity private for business reasons, not just personal ones. That will change now, but how we handle our relationship in the workplace is something we can discuss. My father cleared his throat, clearly struggling to reconcile his perception of me with this new reality. Where do you live? He asked suddenly. You always said you had a small apartment downtown. I have a penthouse on the waterfront, I answered, and homes in New York and San Francisco, where our other main offices are located. My mother sank into a kitchen chair, looking overwhelmed. All this time, we had no idea. That was by design, I acknowledged. After years of trying to prove myself to you, I decided to stop trying. The company became my focus instead. Harold's phone rang again, and he glanced at me apologetically before stepping into the hallway to take the call. I could hear him talking in his executive voice, suddenly very much the SVP addressing a crisis situation. Veronica stared at me, as if seeing a stranger. In many ways, she was. The Crystal she knew, the little sister she had alternately ignored and patronized, had never existed. Not really. I suppose I should get my things from the garage, I said, into the awkward silence. I'll find a hotel for tonight. No, my mother exclaimed, jumping to her feet. You can't leave now. It's Christmas Eve and your family. The irony of her sudden concern wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The guest room is already prepared, my father added hastily. Harold can take the den, or the garage if necessary. I wouldn't put anyone in that garage, I said firmly. Not even for one night. Harold returned, slipping his phone into his pocket. That was the board chairman. They've called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. He looked at me with new respect in his eyes. Your team works fast. Efficiency has always been a priority at Nexitech, I replied. The dynamics in the room had shifted completely. My family stood awkwardly in their own kitchen, suddenly unsure of their place. The power balance that had defined our relationships for decades had been upended in the span of 15 minutes. I need some air, Veronica said, abruptly heading for the back door. After a moment's hesitation, I followed her. The back porch was covered in a thin layer of fresh snow, glittering under the porch light. Veronica stood at the railing, her breath, forming clouds in the cold air. "Are you really going to keep me on?" she asked, without turning around. "Or was that just for show in front of everyone?" I meant what I said, I told her, joining her at the railing. "Your work is good, Veronica. Our personal history doesn't change that." She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. "I've been horrible to you." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You have. And now you're my boss." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. God, the irony. "Life is full of unexpected twists," I said. Finally, she turned to face me. "Why didn't you tell me all these years watching me brag about Apex, knowing you could buy and sell us 10 times over? Why let me make such a fool of myself?" I considered her question carefully, searching for the honest answer. At first it was self-preservation. The company was growing but still vulnerable. Then it became habit. And maybe part of me was waiting. Waiting for what? "For one of you to see me," I admitted. "To be interested in my life without knowing what I had accomplished. To value me, not for my success." Tears welled in Veronica's eyes, something I couldn't remember seeing since we were children. "I don't think I know how to do that anymore. With anyone." It was perhaps the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I went back inside to retrieve my overnight bag from the garage, moving past my stunned family members who seemed frozen in place. When I returned to the house, Harold was collecting his belongings from the guest room. "I've called a car service," he told me. "I think it's best if I give your family some space tonight." "You don't have to leave," I said. "I think I do," he countered with a wry smile. "Besides, I have about 100 emails to answer before morning. Apparently my new boss is quite demanding." For the first time that evening, I felt a genuine smile tug at my lips. "Is that so?" "Her reputation precedes her," he confirmed, then added more seriously, "For what it's worth, you've built something remarkable. The security framework you developed revolutionized the industry. I'm actually looking forward to seeing where you take Apex." With that unexpected vote of confidence, Harold departed, leaving me alone with my family for the first revelation's aftermath. The living room had never felt so silent. We sat in our usual places, yet everything had changed. My parents occupied their matching recliners. Ethan perched on the arm of the sofa, Veronica curled into the corner of the love seat. And I sat on the ottoman, all of us separated by more than just physical space. So my father finally broke the silence, a tech empire. It wasn't quite a question, but I nodded anyway. "Yes." "And you've been running this company all this time while we thought—" My mother trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "Well, you thought I was failing," I finished for her. "Yes." Veronica stared at her hands. "Why keep it secret for so long? Why not just tell us?" The question seemed simple, but the answer was complicated, layered with years of hurt and disappointment. "At first, it was because I needed to prove it to myself," I explained. "I didn't want to announce big plans, only to fail. Then as the company grew, I realized something: you had never shown interest in my work before. Why would money change that? What I wanted wasn't your approval of my bank account. I wanted you to believe in me, in my vision." "We always believed in you," my mother protested weakly. "No," I said firmly, but without anger. "You believed in a version of me that never existed. The daughter who would follow Veronica's path. When I chose differently, your belief vanished." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We were concerned about your future. That's what parents do." "There's a difference between concern and dismissal," I pointed out. "You never once asked me to explain my business model or my goals. You just assumed I was playing at being an entrepreneur." Ethan cleared his throat. "I remember when you tried to tell us about your first round of funding. Mom interrupted you to ask Veronica about her new car. My mother flushed. I don't remember that. I do, Veronica said quietly. I remember thinking it was fine because whatever Crystal was doing couldn't be as important as my promotion. The admission hung in the air between us. In all our years of rivalry, Veronica had never acknowledged her role in diminishing me. What does Nexitech actually do? Ethan asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Besides owning Apex now. For the first time that evening, I felt a spark of hope. Here was a real question about my work, not my wealth. We started with advanced cloud security, I explained. The security protocols I developed became the industry standard within 2 years. From there, we expanded into integrated systems management, data protection, and eventually artificial intelligence applications for enterprise. Ethan nodded, processing this information. That's why Apex was a strategic acquisition. Their hardware complements your software ecosystem. Exactly, I confirmed, impressed by his quick understanding. And you did all this without a college degree, my father said, his tone unreadable. The skills I needed I taught myself, I said. The rest I hired people who knew more than me. That's what good CEOs do. My mother stood suddenly disappearing into the kitchen. When she returned, she carried a magazine that had been buried under a stack of mail. The cover featured a silhouette with the headline, Nexitech's Mysterious Founder Tech's Most Influential Invisible Leader. This came with Richard's business journal last month, she said, her voice tight. I never connected it to you. I never even read the article. The irony wasn't lost on me. Evidence of my success had literally been sitting on their coffee table unread and unnoticed. Does this mean you're rich? My father asked awkwardly. Yes, I answered simply. Very. Veronica made a sound between a laugh and a sob. All those times I offered to help you financially, to get you back on your feet. God, you must have been laughing at me. I wasn't laughing, I assured her. It was painful, actually, to be seen as someone who needed saving when I was building something I was proud of. Are you going to fire me? She asked suddenly, voicing the fear that had clearly been consuming her since the revelation. I already told you no, I reminded her. Your position is secure, though your reporting structure will change. She nodded, relief washing over her face. I don't deserve that kindness from you. It's not kindness, I corrected her. It's business. You're good at what you do, whatever our personal history. My father leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I don't know what to say, Crystal. We've been wrong about you. Completely wrong. It was perhaps the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. I kept the truth from you, I acknowledged. That's on me. But we gave you reason to, my mother said softly. We made you feel like you had to hide your success instead of share it. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room again. Years of familial patterns don't dissolve in a single evening, no matter how revelatory. Where do we go from here? Ethan finally asked, the practical one as always. It was the question hanging over all of us. How do you rebuild relationships based on fundamental misconceptions? How do you move forward when the past has been rewritten so completely? I don't know, I admitted. This isn't how I planned to tell you. I'm still processing it myself. Will you stay tonight? My mother asked, an edge of desperation in her voice. Not in the garage, obviously. The guest room is yours. The thought of staying, of trying to sleep under this roof, with all these emotions swirling, was overwhelming. But the alternative, driving away on Christmas Eve, felt equally wrong. I'll stay, I decided, but I have calls to make first. The announcement has gone out to the executive team, and there will be questions. My father nodded, a new respect in his eyes. Of course, you have a company to run. The simple acknowledgement of my responsibilities, something I had never received from him before, felt strangely validating. As I stood to retrieve my laptop from the garage, Veronica rose as well. "I'll help you move your things to the guest room," she offered an olive branch, in the form of a simple courtesy. Together, we walked to the garage in silence. The space felt different now, the indignity of the accommodation even more stark in light of the evening's revelations. "I'm sorry about this," Veronica said, gesturing to the camping cot. "It was my idea. I thought it would be funny. To make me sleep in a freezing garage on Christmas Eve," I asked, raising an eyebrow. She had the grace to look ashamed. "It sounds cruel when you say it like that." "Because it was cruel," I said simply. "Whether I was a struggling entrepreneur or a billionaire CEO, it was unkind." She nodded, accepting the truth of this. "I've spent so many years seeing you as competition instead of as my sister. I don't know how to stop." "Maybe that's where we start," I suggested, gathering my overnight bag. "By not competing, by just being sisters." As we re-entered the house, Harold texted me, "Car service here. Heading downtown. Board briefed on situation. Full support for your leadership. Merry Christmas, boss." The message brought a smile to my face. At least professionally, the transition was proceeding smoothly. My mother had prepared the guest room with fresh towels and had turned down the bed, a peace offering in household chores. My father had built a fire in the fireplace, the home warming as if in apology for the coldness it had shown me earlier. That night, lying in the guest bed, instead of the garage cot, I reflected on the day's unexpected turn. 5 years of hiding ended in a moment. 5 years of separation from my family, bridged by a revelation I hadn't planned. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The formal announcement to all Apex employees, the press releases that would make public my role as CEO, the inevitable questions about why I had remained anonymous for so long. But tonight, in this quiet moment, I allowed myself to feel something unexpected: relief. The weight of deception had been lifted. Whatever came next, I would face it as my whole self, no longer compartmentalizing my life into the successful CEO and the disappointing daughter. Across the hall, I could hear Veronica on the phone, presumably with colleagues at Apex, her voice hushed but urgent. Down the hall, my parents' low voices filtered through their door, no doubt discussing the stranger their middle child had turned out to be. We were still a fractured family, but for the first time in years we were seeing each other clearly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't even understanding. But it was a beginning. Christmas morning dawned, with awkward uncertainty hanging in the air like the scent of brewing coffee. I rose early, accustomed to starting my day before sunrise, and found my father already in the kitchen, staring into his mug as if it contained answers to questions he hadn't yet formulated. "Merry Christmas," I offered tentatively. He looked up, startled. "Merry Christmas, Crystal. Coffee, please." He poured me a cup with unusual care, as if serving an important guest rather than his daughter. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I would have in the garage," I replied, unable to resist the small jab. He winced. "About that?" It was inexcusable. "I want you to know I didn't realize how cold it was out there." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I typically received. I accepted it with a nod. "I have some calls to make before everyone wakes up," I said, checking my phone. "The formal announcement goes to all Apex employees at 9. "Of course," he said, and then added awkwardly, "Should I leave you alone for privacy?" The question revealed how little he knew about my life, my work, my daily routine. "No, it's fine. I'm used to working anywhere." He watched me with newfound curiosity as I set up my laptop at the kitchen table, the same place where I had done homework as a child. As I answered emails and approved final communications, I could feel his eyes on me, seeing me truly working for the first time. By 8:30, the rest of the family had trickled into the kitchen. My mother fussed over breakfast with extra attention, producing elaborate French toast and fresh fruit that hadn't been planned for our original meal. Veronica checked her phone compulsively, awaiting the official announcement. Ethan observed us all with the careful neutrality of someone watching a delicate negotiation. "Should we do presents now or after breakfast?" my mother asked, trying to establish some normalcy. "After is fine," I said, closing my laptop as 9 o'clock approached. "The announcement is going out now." Almost on cue, Veronica's phone chimed with an incoming email. She read it silently, her expression unreadable, then looked up at me. "It's official," she said. "Nexitech Solutions has acquired Apex Industries, effective immediately. Crystal Montgomery, founder and CEO of Nexitech, will address all employees after the holiday." My parents exchanged glances, the reality of my position sinking in anew. "Montgomery," my father repeated. "You kept our family name." "Of course," I said. "Whatever our differences, I'm still a Montgomery." Something flickered across his face, something that might have been pride. Breakfast passed with stilted conversation, everyone carefully avoiding landmines of past hurts while trying to navigate our new reality. When we finally gathered around the Christmas tree, the contrast to previous years was stark. The presents under the tree told their own story. There were the usual carefully chosen gifts for Veronica and Ethan, and the perfunctory items for me selected, without much thought or knowledge of my preferences. A generic scarf, bath products, from a mall kiosk, a best-selling novel. I had no interest in reading. What no one had anticipated was the elegant stack of packages I had brought with me, initially planning to leave them behind when I departed for a hotel. Each was wrapped in simple but expensive paper containing gifts I had selected months ago. "You brought presents?" my mother asked, surprise evident in her voice. "Of course," I replied. "It's Christmas." One by one, I distributed them. For my father, a rare first edition of his favorite economic text signed by the author. For my mother, a handcrafted jewelry box containing a necklace from a boutique designer she had once mentioned, admiring. For Ethan, a high-end watch he had coveted but would never buy for himself. And for Veronica, a leather portfolio embossed with her initials filled with Japanese stationery she had fallen in love with during a business trip to Tokyo last year. Their faces registered shock as they opened these thoughtfully selected items. Evidence that despite their inattention to my life, I had been paying attention to theirs. "How did you know about the necklace?" my mother asked, fingering the delicate pendant. "I only mentioned it once years ago." "I listen," I said simply. "I always have." My father cleared his throat, visibly moved by his gift. This must have been nearly impossible to find." "Not impossible," I corrected him. "Just required some persistence." Veronica traced her fingers over the embossed leather. "You remembered about Tokyo." "You talked about that stationery shop for weeks afterward," I reminded her. "How the paper felt different from anything you'd used before." They exchanged uncomfortable glances, the contrast between their hastily purchased gifts and my carefully chosen ones, highlighting the imbalance in our relationships. "We have something else for you," my mother said, suddenly disappearing into her bedroom. She returned with a small, hastily wrapped package. "We got this morning. Your father went to the 24-hour pharmacy while you were on your calls." Inside was a silver frame containing a printout of the magazine article about Nexitech, the one they had ignored until now. "We thought maybe you could sign it," my father said awkwardly, "since you're the mysterious CEO they wrote about." It was a clumsy gesture, but the first acknowledgement of my professional identity they had ever offered. I accepted it with a small smile. Thank you. As the morning progressed, something shifted in our interactions. My parents began asking questions about Nexatech tentative at first, then, with growing interest, as I explained the company's evolution. Ethan contributed thoughtful questions about business strategy. Even Veronica, after receiving reassurance about her position, began engaging with genuine curiosity. So all those times you were on your laptop during holidays, you were actually running a $1 billion company? Ethan asked, incredulous. Pretty much, I confirmed. Last Thanksgiving I was finalizing a major acquisition while you all thought I was playing games to avoid conversation. Is that why you always left early? My mother asked. Because of work? I hesitated, weighing honesty against kindness. Partly work, yes, and partly because these gatherings were difficult for me. Because of how we treated you, my father acknowledged, surprising me with his directness. Yes, I admitted. It's hard to sit through hours of being treated as the family disappointment. A heavy silence fell over the room. My mother wiped away a tear. I found some old photos, she said suddenly, retrieving an album from the bookshelf. From when you were in high school, working on that computer club. She opened to a page showing a teenage me with a group of fellow students, proudly displaying a coding project that had won a regional competition. A competition my family had declined to attend. You won first place, she said, tracing the ribbon visible in the photo. I remember now. We didn't go because Veronica had a volleyball tournament the same weekend. It's fine, I said automatically. The dismissal of my achievement so familiar, it barely registered. No, it's not fine, my father interjected. We should have been there. One of us at least. Veronica looked at the photo over my mother's shoulder. I had no idea you were doing things like this. I was so caught up in my own activities. You were encouraged to be, I pointed out without accusation. We all were shaped by the family dynamics. The conversation continued. Through lunch, decades of misunderstanding, slowly being addressed. There were no dramatic apologies or tearful reconciliations, just the gradual acknowledgement of patterns that had shaped our relationships. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Herald Company. Wide email has gone out. Your inbox is exploding with congratulations and questions. PR team handling press inquiries, all proceeding smoothly. I showed the message to Veronica, whose anxiety about the workplace transition was visible. It's going to be fine, I assured her. The integration team will handle most of the changes. Your day-to-day work won't be dramatically different. Except that my little sister is now the big boss, she said, with a wry smile, the first genuine one I'd seen from her in years. There is that, I acknowledged. As evening approached, we gathered for a simpler dinner than the previous night's formal affair. The conversation flowed more naturally, no longer weighted with secrets and pretense. My father asked about Nexatech's expansion plans. My mother inquired about my homes in other cities. Ethan expressed interest in my approach to management. Most surprisingly, Veronica shared stories about Apex that invited my perspective, creating a bridge between our professional worlds. The security platform rollout was a nightmare from marketing's perspective, she admitted. We couldn't figure out how to explain the benefits clearly enough for the average user. That's been a challenge industry-wide, I agreed. Technical features versus user benefits. At Nexatech, we reverse the development process. We start with the user experience and work backward to the technical specifications. That's brilliant, she acknowledged, professional respect entering her voice for the first time. For a brief moment, I glimpsed what might have been possible all along, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. It wasn't too late to build that now, I realized. After dinner, as we settled in the living room with coffee, my father asked the question that had clearly been on his mind all day. Why did you decide to keep your success a secret from us? Specifically, I understand the business reasons for anonymity, but why not tell your family? It was the heart of the matter, the question that had lingered beneath all our interactions since the revelation. I needed to know if you could ever see me for who I am, not what I've achieved, I answered honestly. I wanted to be valued for my ideas, my vision, my character, not my bank account or title. And we failed that test, my mother said softly. Yes, I confirmed. Until yesterday you did. And now Ethan asked, what happens with us now? I looked around at their faces, so familiar, yet somehow new in the light of our changed understanding. Now we start again, I said. Not pretending the past didn't happen, but not letting it dictate our future either. As Christmas Day drew to a close, I realized something unexpected had occurred. The revelation of my secret had not brought the vindication or triumph I might have imagined. Instead, it had created space for something more valuable, the possibility of authentic connection. We were not a healed family, not yet. There were years of hurt and misunderstanding to address, patterns of behavior to unlearn. But for the first time since I was a teenager, with a dream no one believed in, I felt seen by my family. Not completely, not perfectly, but genuinely. It was a beginning. 6 months after that fateful Christmas, I stood on the deck of my lakeside home, watching my family arrive for our summer gathering. The transformation in our relationships was visible in the easy way they navigated to my door, no longer awkward or uncertain in my space. My mother embraced me warmly, a far cry from the stiff greetings of the past. The house is beautiful, Crystal. You must give me the full tour this time. My father followed with a bottle of champagne and a technology magazine. You made the cover again. Thought we might add it to the collection. Since Christmas, my parents had created a dedicated shelf in their home, displaying articles and awards related to my work. Their pride now openly displayed, where once it had been reserved exclusively for Veronica and Ethan. Our weekly family calls had become a fixture in all our schedules, no longer the obligatory check-ins of the past, but genuine connections. My parents now proudly introduced me as our entrepreneur daughter to friends and neighbors, sometimes going overboard in their enthusiasm for my achievements. Veronica arrived last, looking more relaxed than I had seen her in years. After the acquisition, she had initially struggled with her new position in the corporate hierarchy, but eventually found her footing. Our professional relationship had evolved in tandem, with our personal one each strengthening the other. The marketing team loves the new product direction, she told me, as we prepared dinner together, something we had never done before this year. The focus groups are responding exactly as you predicted. Your presentation to the board last month was excellent, I replied. Clear, persuasive, backed by solid data. She smiled at the professional acknowledgement. I learned from the best. Ethan joined us in the kitchen, laptop in hand. Can I run something by you? I'm thinking of starting a financial consultancy focused on tech startups. I've drafted a business plan. This, too, was new. After Christmas, Ethan had approached me for career advice, eventually developing his own entrepreneurial ambitions. I had become the mentor he sought out, our relationship deepening through shared professional interests. As we gathered around the table on the deck overlooking the water, I marveled at the distance we had traveled in 6 months. Not just in the external changes, the integration of our professional and personal lives, but in the internal shifts that had allowed us to see each other more clearly. I've been thinking about something my father said as we finished dinner. About what you said at Christmas, about wanting to be valued for who you are, not what you've achieved. I nodded, remembering the raw conversation that had begun our healing. I realized that's what I always wanted too, he continued. I wanted my worth to be measured by my success, my status. I pushed that onto all of you, especially you, Crystal, because you challenged that value system most directly. It was perhaps the most insightful thing my father had ever said about our relationship. I think we were all caught in that trap, Veronica added, measuring our worth by external markers. I was so afraid of losing my status as the successful one that I couldn't celebrate anyone else's victories. Especially mine, I acknowledged. Especially yours, she agreed, because your success was on your own terms, which made it more threatening somehow. As the conversation continued into the evening, I reflected on my own growth over these months. The burden of hiding my success had been heavier than I realized. The freedom of authenticity, of being fully myself with my family, had transformed not just our relationships, but my own sense of self. I had let go of the need for their validation, yet, ironically, in doing so had created space for them to offer it freely. I had set boundaries while still allowing for reconciliation, finding strength in vulnerability rather than isolation. Professionally, the changes had been equally profound. Going public as the face of Nexitech had initially brought scrutiny, but ultimately strengthened our market position. My experiences with my family had informed new company policies supporting work-life balance and non-traditional career paths. I had begun mentoring young entrepreneurs from backgrounds similar to mine, particularly women whose ideas were dismissed by traditional power structures. The satisfaction this brought rivaled any acquisition or product launch. Most surprisingly, Veronica and I had developed a collaborative relationship that capitalized on our different strengths. Her marketing intuition complemented my technical vision. We had moved from competition to collaboration, each finding security in our unique contributions. "Do you remember the garage?" my mother asked, suddenly breaking into my thoughts. The question might once have triggered anger or hurt, but now I just smiled. Hard to forget. "We converted it," my father said, "into a home office for when you visit. Heated floors, proper insulation, a desk overlooking the garden." The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it was sincere. The space that had represented my exclusion from the family now stood as a monument to their acceptance. "That's thoughtful," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. As the stars appeared above the lake, I considered how far we had come, and how far we still had to go. We were not a perfect family. We still occasionally fell into old patterns, still sometimes hurt each other without meaning to. But we were learning, growing, becoming more authentic with each other. The previous Christmas had been a crucible, burning away pretense and forcing us to see each other clearly. The pain of that revelation had been necessary clearing ground for something new to grow. Success, I had learned, was not measured by achievements alone, but by the authenticity of our connections. The courage to be vulnerable, the willingness to grow beyond old limitations. The true measure of success was not in what you built, but in how you built it, and who you became along the way. As my family prepared to leave, promises of next month's gathering already being made, I felt a quiet contentment that no business victory had ever provided. The garage that had once been my Christmas exile was now a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of genuine connection. Have you ever had to hide a part of yourself from family or friends? What would happen if they suddenly discovered your hidden success or talent? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the people who dismiss your dreams are the ones who most need to see you succeed. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it.